Fabulous. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Manny's Super Civic Cyber Conversations. My name is Manny, and we are going to be talking with our guests for the first 20 minutes and then open this up for questions at the end. But if you have a question for the Supervisor of District 10, Shamann Walton, our guest for today, you can type it in at any time in the Q&A box. Listen, so we're doing this because the goal of Manny's is to civically engage the public, and we are continuing our mission in this time of need. We're doing it on the internet, and it's been so amazing to see civic leaders from all across the political world, not just in San Francisco, but across the nation, join us for these short conversations. And today we are joined by an amazing, amazing public servant, a friend of mine, and the Supervisor of District 10, Shamann Walton. Hi, Shamann.
Hey, how you doing, Manny? Thank you so much for providing this platform for us to communicate with the public during this health crisis.
My pleasure. I feel like you've done a lot of these, haven't you? Have you been doing a lot of these Zoom calls with the public?
We're doing a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of public forums, some press conferences, and so we're really learning how to communicate with the public virtually.
And so what are you finding is the thing that the public is most helpful to people to hear from someone like you in your case? You're doing a lot of these. What do you think people have, what is the feedback you've gotten for what's been the most helpful kind of information that they're receiving from someone in your chair, in your place?
Well, I think the biggest thing as we continue to have conversations with constituents and residents in the district and across the city is knowing where to go for the resources that they need. So providing the resource guides and getting out information of important phone numbers, important email addresses, important websites has been a major focal point of what people are requesting, because they want to know how to address their unemployment needs. How do independent contractors get paid? Where do seniors go for food? How do we get childcare for our families? And so being able to provide those resources and let the community know where to go has been the major request.
So if we could just architect it out for a second. The places that people need to go to these days are, if you need food, there are places to get food pantries, right? If you need to get tested, right, there's places to get tested. If you think you have COVID, there's places to go to get treated. And then I guess there's kind of, other things. And so is there one centralized place where all this information is living, or how does it work?
So in terms of how we're operating as the Board of Supervisors in the city, we have an emergency operations center set up at Moscone Center.
Okay.
And that is where we are yielding all the phone calls, all the emails, and providing a central response from the city to community. But to your point, a lot of things are also sporadic. When we talk about testing, which is the biggest need and the scarcest resource that we have right now, is getting enough tests so that we can test folks who need us. And that's what we're working on, getting more tests and making sure that there are more places for people to go to get tested. There are conversations about pop-up testing sites that are not a reality today. Hopefully by next week, we'll be able to provide information to the public about some of these pop-up testing sites. Naturally, we'll start with a few areas across the city and are pushing to make sure that they grow so we can cover San Francisco as a whole. But the testing kits themselves are one of the biggest needs that we have, and we're trying to keep up with the pace here in the city.
Do you think that shelter in place is going to get lifted after April 7th?
I would definitely bet against that. In fact, we have already gotten word from the San Francisco Unified School District that they're closing schools till May 1st, and then going to reassess after that. So I would not be confident in thinking that we would lift shelter in place by April 7th. And in fact, we still are encouraging people to stay indoors, go out for exercise, social distance. If you have to go to the grocery store, have to go get medication, make sure that you're keeping your distance from other people, because the spread of this virus and the health of folks is the most important thing that we need to make sure we prevent the spread and protect health.
Okay, so your district, District 10, you've got Potrero Hill, you've got Dog Patch, you've got Bayview, Hunters Point. Have I missed any neighborhoods? Those are the
Visitation Valley, Little Hollywood, of course, major parts of District 10 as well.
I'm so sorry. Cannot forget Viz Valley. What would you say what are you hearing from your constituents, from your very, very large chunk of San Francisco? What are their needs? What are the things that they're asking you for? And what do you feel like are some issues that are affecting District 10 in particular?
Well, big thing, as you may know, we have most of the children in San Francisco in District 10,
Yeah.
and with schools being closed, providing childcare for people who have to go to work and who are not fortunate enough to be working at home, working from a computer. They have to go work, or they're essential workers, making
Right.
sure that child care is available and trying to work with some of our providers to find a way to where we can get some of our child care workers to want to come in and make sure that they're protected if they do come to work, to provide that much needed child care for our families, making sure that with schools being closed, that there were sites where our families could pick up food on a
Right.
daily basis, because as you may know, the schools were providing a major resource in terms of feeding our students. And so we have 4 sites in the district right now. We're fighting to get another site in Visitation Valley for our families and for our young people to go be able to go pick up food. There are seniors who are isolated and who need food delivery. And so we've been working hard to make sure that that food delivery is happening for our seniors within the district, with across our communities here in District 10. Those are major things that are coming up. And of course, making sure that we are providing meals for our unhoused population, doing everything we can to try to find housing for our homeless population, which has been one of our biggest struggles, because a lot of times people are only focused on providing housing to folks who are unhoused population who may have symptoms, or who may be a certain age group. But we want to make sure that our unhoused population is actually provided an opportunity to shelter in place like everyone else,
Right.
that's so safely and isolated, so that we can do everything we can to stop the spread of the virus.
So Shamann, excuse me, Supervisor Walton, you are a leader, right now. Not just, you've been a leader for a while, you're president of the Board of Education as well, but right now you and the mayor of 12 people who are, holding up the city. What do you think is your responsibility and role, you personally, Shamann Walton, as a leader right now in a time of crisis in our city? Beyond just the distribution of information, what do you see is your role and purpose right now as a leader in our city?
Well, personally, for me, as someone who's provided direct service the majority of my life, and who's worked closely with our providers and worked closely with folks in community, I feel that I need to be responsive and be available to all of my constituents 24/7. I'm sitting here right now in City Hall with one of my team members. All of my ledge aides are working 24/7 around the clock. We're responding to emails and crisis across the district. People who need something, we're making sure that we connect them to the service providers that are going to be able to bring it and deliver it. We're checking all emails, responding to everything that's coming through the door. And I'm also visiting some of our sites, making sure that our CBOs and our provider network have the support that they need. I really feel it's important for me to be as visible as possible while we're trying to be safe during this pandemic, but also making sure that responsiveness is number one. And that's why we're doing a lot of these forums. That's why we're having a lot of conversations with community across the board, because being available is the number one thing I think that our constituents need. And they need to know that we're working for them 24/7 during this crisis.
Well, friend, let me ask you, how are you doing? How's your emotional health? How's your heart?
I'm doing fine. Fortunately, my wife is a registered nurse, and she's going to work every day and being responsive to the
Where's
needs
she a nurse?
of community. So, well, she's with Department of Public Health, and also at another healthcare provider. I don't want to be specific for
Right.
obvious reasons.
Right.
She's working hard to make sure that our community gets the support they need in the healthcare that
Mhm.
they need and deserve. But
Mhm.
being in a house where you have two essential workers, um,
Right.
and also just knowing that I have a system of care from mentors and friends and family who are also available to be there to provide support. We've been doing some Zoom chats and some happy hours via Zoom with friends and with family, so that we can all stay engaged and be there for each other. And so we're doing everything we can to take care of our mental health by working with our support networks also.
It's interesting because San Francisco is a pretty young city, right? As far as cities goes, it's only about 170 years old. If you look at modern San Francisco from the gold rush, and in our 170 years, we've had a lot of shit thrown at us. You know what I mean? We had, the earthquake and the fire, 2 earthquakes. We had the AIDS epidemic. We now have another pandemic. But so many of these conversations, what's been a through line is like our city is resilient, and not only does it rebuild, but it rebuilds with gusto. And so, I guess my question to you is like, thinking, are folks starting already to think about what the rebuild and the rebound looks like, or are we still just heads down trying to like make sure we can make it, we're prepared for the next week, a couple weeks?
Well, we have to be able to walk and chew gum in our roles in leadership. And
Right.
so naturally, we're getting information minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, in
Right.
terms of what new type of responses we may need to work on, what type of support we may need to provide. So, yes, we're hammered down working on what to do right now to be proactive and to be reactive to this pandemic. But we're also having conversations about what we're going to need to do after we come out of this health crisis, because small businesses are suffering, individual workers are suffering,
Right.
our homeless population is suffering, communities are suffering, and there are a lot of needs right now that we're working to address right now with policy and legislation. But coming up out of this, we're going to have to work differently than we have in the past to address a lot of the needs. And I want everyone to know and understand that. But we are having conversations about how to do that. Our typical budget process is not operating the same, and we're still having our budget meetings and still working on ways to reach out to community through this process. We're actually going to extend the amount of time that we work because we are preparing for the worst as we come out of the crisis.
Right. And for anyone who's listening, please go ahead and start typing your questions in for Supervisor Shamann Walton. We'll be able to start taking questions in just a couple of minutes. You mentioned small business. Are there small businesses that you've heard of already, Shamann, that are not going to reopen, that they've decided it's not worth it?
I haven't gotten information yet from specific businesses who said they're completely shut down and this is the end for them. I have, of course, been talking with businesses and business owners about what their needs are and how soon they would need relief so that they would be able to survive through this crisis. Um, but I haven't had those conversations about a business saying they absolutely have to shut down yet. But we're working on several things to support small businesses, and I'll actually go over a list of things my colleagues and I are trying to do and are doing during this crisis.
Who are you going to for advice right now and for inspiration?
Well, my colleagues and I have been working very closely together, sharing stories about what we're doing in our district in terms of response, what is happening out there, what do we see out there. I have constituents that I've worked with in other roles that I'm having a lot of conversations with about how to be responsive. What do they think we need to do here in our office? I have a lot of mentors across the country and
Mhm.
area that either work in public service in some way, shape, form, or fashion that I'm having conversations with. And I'm talking to people who've been through crisis before. To your point, we've gone through several different types of crisis here in
Right.
San Francisco in the past. And so I'm talking to some of our elected officials from the past that have dealt with crisis, what their response has been, what they do. And even though the crisis may be different, how you respond, how you move, and how quick you are to work on some of the policies and strategies to address these major crises is important and relevant to us all.
All right, let's get to questions, folks. If you have questions, you can type them in the question box. The first is from someone whose name I think is Stacy. Would you support closing long streetcars so that people can get out and get exercise while maintaining social distance?
Closing what?
Long streetcars. I guess those are the long muni cars. Is that what you mean, Stacy? You can type it in the chat. What do you mean by long streets to cars?
Ah, um, well, right now, one, we're encouraging people to get out and get exercise
Right.
in your blocks, walking your communities, um, going to parks and social distancing, but not bringing several people with you and uh, demonstrating some of the behavior we've seen. But in terms of closing streets right now, that is not an option. We still have to remember also that we have emergency vehicles that
Right.
need to respond. I was having conversations with our firefighters yesterday, and there are still calls that our emergency vehicles need to be able to get to. And so closing streets is not something that I've explored. We do still encourage folks to get out and get exercise, but we don't want to close streets and encourage people to get out en masse
Right.
on our streets in San
Right.
Francisco.
All right, Mzungu_X. It has a question about small businesses. We all know that it's largely the small independent shops, cafes, and restaurants that make San Francisco unique, give it its character. But Mzungu's worried that it may not be a priority issue right now and that they won't survive. What can we do to help them survive so that when it's all over, we don't have a bunch of big box stores?
Well, one of the first things the city leadership did is make sure that we push back taxes for our businesses so they don't have to pay taxes and licensing fees for a couple of months because we already knew that they were going to be taking a big hit. There is a relief fund for small businesses up to $1 million right now, looking to expand that and make it bigger so that we can provide grants for some of our businesses. And Supervisor Ronan introduced a $20 million relief loan program for our small businesses so that they can take in loans at no interest so that we can provide them with opportunities to get resources as soon as possible. That is going through the budget process right now, and we're trying to make sure that that is a reality for our small businesses. But there are so many other things that we are going to have to do to support businesses. We're working on strategies to do that, but some things are in place and more things are on the way. But I do want our small business community to know that they are a priority for us during this health crisis.
And then if I may, Supervisor, District 10, I think, has some of the highest vacancy rates in the city. And I think what we're probably going to see is there are going to be shops that don't reopen, meaning there'll be more vacancies that folks are doing to try to encourage more businesses to come into spaces is probably going to need to be souped up a bit because we may see more vacancies. Next question is from Magic Altman. What is the board doing to get the most vulnerable out of jail and to accelerate the jail's closure?
So right now, Supervisor Fewer, and supported by myself and other colleagues, wrote legislation to close the county jail within the next few months. And that is something that we've all been pushing for and we have known as a priority. We've also been speaking with the Sheriff's Department, the District Attorney, and the public defenders to decrease the jail population. As of yesterday, the jail population was at 899. Last week, it was over 1,000. So we are working hard to, one, release people who should not be incarcerated at this time and get to a point where we can close the jail. And we're going to try to do that as soon as possible. So there are things happening right now. Legislation is in place. There are things that our sheriff and DA and public defender are working on to decrease the population day by day. We get the jail count every day. We're staying on top of that. And we are going to close the county jail because naturally, one, we don't need people in congregate settings, and we're trying to make sure that we can eliminate those type of environments as much as possible. Jail population is going down. There is legislation to close, and we are on top of that.
Okay, another question about these streets. Christopher Hugh wants to know, understanding that we're not closing streets in D10, but do you support closing JFK Drive or other parts of Golden Gate Park to cars so that folks can safely exercise? Do you really think people aren't able to safely exercise with the public right-of-way that we have now? Is that an issue that you're seeing?
I don't feel that way, and I don't think that that's an issue right now. It's definitely not something that has come across my desk. I've had conversations, obviously, with people who have talked about closing streets and closing them to Golden Gate Park. But no, I do not think that that's what we need to do right now. Again, going back to the fact, we want people to exercise, we want people to get out the house, but that would also send the wrong message. We are not encouraging people to get out en masse, to be on our streets in groups. And I think that would lead to sending that type of a message.
Right.
That's a personal opinion and not something that I think we need to be doing at this point.
And your opinion matters greatly, sir. Ken Alston, you are in the chair. Ken Alston, thank you for taking questions. Supervisor Walton, we are seeing now how important it is to have reliable access to the internet and technology when sheltering in place. Do you think that residents across District 10 are able to access the technology that they need? Is technology access inequality an issue that you're looking into? And then I'll just add, if you think it is an issue, or do you know anywhere where the public can help fix that or be a part of the solution?
So definitely there are inequities that inherently exist when we're talking about people having to get the services they need, get educated, being connected to technology. No, we do not have all the technology needs met in District 10. Some of our most isolated communities still don't have internet access. internet services. And even if they did, they don't necessarily have the hardware. Right now, we're working with organizations like YCD, with the school district, to get laptops, to get technology into the homes of some of our families across the district. Foundations are providing resources and grants right now for that to happen. And so we're going to hear from our office working with some of our service providers over the next week or so about how we're going to get laptops into the hands of families.
Great.
Schools are working with us, how some of our service providers are working with us, because this is something that it's been a problem even before COVID in terms of
Right.
digital divide that exists. And there are some strategies we're working on to address it during this crisis. But even so, without citywide free internet access, that inequity is going to exist. I know that we have some providers providing free internet right now for families during this crisis. My concern after this crisis is those internet providers who are providing service for free,
Right.
who's going to upsell.
Right.
Take advantage of the crisis after this, and I am very concerned about that. So those things are definitely on our radar. We're going to watch that, but no, we do not have equitable technology provisions for families in D10. We're working on that, and that is something that has existed prior to the crisis.
Solid. Well, seeing no more questions, Supervisor, where should if folks have questions that are District 10, where should they email? What's the email that you're giving folks to reach
So
out?
questions specific to D10, of course, also, you can always email waltonstaff@sfgov.org. That is a place where you can send us emails. We'll respond in real time and get you the information that you need. I do just want to talk about a couple of things that the Board of Supervisors has been doing during this crisis.
Okay.
Resolution encouraging banks, financial institutions, and public utilities to have a 60-day moratorium on default for customers, and that was on March 10th. On March 17th, we set up a system for us to be responsive at the Emergency Operations Center to all of our constituents. There's an emergency ordinance to temporarily prohibit certain types of no-fault evictions that would otherwise be permitted under administrative code. We put out emergency ordinance to regulate evictions of commercial tenants due to non-payment of rent when the tenant was unable to pay due to financial impacts related to COVID. There's a pending ordinance authorizing the treasurer to secure a short-term line of credit in an amount not to exceed $20 million, which is what I talked about earlier. Pending ordinance appropriating $20 million of short-term loan proceeds and $600,000 for the general fund to make sure that our treasurer can actually administer the loan program. Resolutions urging state to provide relief for small businesses. Resolution urging elected officials and CBOs to protect our communities during COVID. Requested legislation that would introduce a family income relief fund for $500 for undocumented immigrants, independent contractors. Our office is laser focused on making sure that we protect folks who do not receive any relief from federal stimulus program, state stimulus program, or any other type of program. So that legislation is on the table right now, and we're really going to be pushing to make sure that we protect this population here in San Francisco. There are resolutions urging the mayor to require employees in large retail and retail stores to get hazardous pay, urging state and federal emergency fund for BART and for Muni. I'm going to push something like that, similar for Caltrain at this next week's meeting. But things that we are pushing for to make sure that we are very responsive to the needs in real time here in San Francisco. And so any information you need from District 10, Walton staff at sfgov. We'll continue with our newsletters. We'll continue with our daily updates on social media. And we also have a District 10 resource flyer that we're going to be sending out. So when you want to know about how seniors get meals, what we're doing for childcare, how we're responding to homelessness in the district, all those resources will be in your face in real time.
Wow, Shamann, thank you so much for being such a leader and for all you and your colleagues working so hard for your residents and the folks that may be getting left behind by the federal government. I'm sure they're happy to know that our city government and our state government, and you in particular, are looking out for them. Folks who are listening in and folks who will be listening in to this after the fact, waltons.org. Also, Manny's is shut down and we need your help. We need your support. We need your love. I've put in a link in the chat box. It's joinit.org/o/Manny's. Please send us a donation, or even better, become a sponsor. It's $36 a month. And that is exactly how we are going to make it through this crisis. We really appreciate all of you who've tuned in. Thank you very much, and tag us at welcome-to-manny's.com. And final plug, thank you to our team at Manny's, Sam, Jupiter, and Ram. And thank you to Natalie in your office, Shamann, for always being
Yes.
All right, thank you so
Definitely.
much, Supervisor. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.